That's right, MP peeps. Time to click the pause button on those Olympic Games and tune in to a new, fresh episode of The Nonprofits. We are back for your viewing entertainment. Good afternoon to those viewing us through YouTube and through our listeners via the AEN podcast or the Atheist Experience Network podcast. We, of course, are your nonprofits. This is a 501c3 nonprofit educational organization dedicated to the separation of religion and government and promoting positive atheism. And with me this week, we welcome back our fan favorite and official NP intimate, Jack Parker. Truly appreciate having you back on with us again, Jack. How have these COVID days been treating you?
Yeah, I've been managing okay. It's good to be back on here to have something to do, being stuck inside still.
Oh, yeah, that's true, of course. And I know every day is COVID day to me. So, again, very inspiring. And, of course, with me this week, we welcome back, of course, our very loyal and faithful and hard-working Malty. Very happy to have you on with me this week as well. How are you doing, sir?
Oh, I'm doing all right. Thank you, Jenna.
Perfect. Very good. And a special welcome to our new guest host for this afternoon, Richard Gilliver. So very happy to have you with us this week, Richard.
I'm very happy to be here. I'm looking forward to it.
Yes, this is exciting. I know now you are not only a host of your own separate online podcast called Skeptic Takeout, but you rub elbows with our very own Laura McGee and another Richard on a different podcast called Skeptic Takeover. Tell us a little bit about that.
Skeptic
excuse me.
Skeptic Hangout is the one I do with the other two. That's with a weekly podcast we do, and that's really interesting because we go in cold on every subject. All we have is the subject title, and we just dive in and talk about it for like an hour and 20 minutes. So it's great fun. Never know where we go with that.
Yeah, I know. I viewed a few of your shows. There was one particular topic you all were talking about on humanism, which was my personal favorite. I really enjoyed the dynamic of you all just having that discussion and kind of breaking down the intricacies of humanism and that activism behind that. So do appreciate your activism on that show and, of course, here with us now. And hopefully after this show, you'll continue to be with us for the journey.
Hopefully.
Yeah. So before I dive too much into rambling, let's go ahead and start off or kick off our, main topic. Folks, of course, as we all know, the Olympics is happening. And I do understand that as of the recording or premiering date, which is Sunday, is going to be the closing ceremony of the Olympics. And so, nevertheless, it still happened despite the COVID pandemic. So far, before I jump in too much into the hard topic, I just want to ask a general question for all of you, just to kind of gauge, what would you say as far as present and past your favorite Olympic sport? Well, let's start with you, Richard.
Ooh, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've always quite liked the hurdles. Maybe because I've been lousy at it when I've tried it myself, so it's great to see someone good at something.
Right. I remember doing that maybe once in high school, and I was just as bad, so that's okay. What about you, Jack?
Probably the sprint, just because it's something that I just would never be able to do myself. I have enough trouble walking, let alone running. But I'm really impressed by it always. I remember watching a documentary a while back on how they, on average, have higher lung capacity, which is just wild to me.
Yeah. Nice, very nice. And Malty, any interest?
Well, yeah, I feel you, Jack. Balance has always been a thing for me. So actually, I was a swimmer. You can't fall down when you're in the water. So actually, I do appreciate some of the sprints. The 100 free and the 100 fly are definitely were my competitive sports or events. So I like to watch those.
Nice. I know my personal favorite, me and my sister have this kind of mutual favorite, is both swimming and gymnastics, no less, which is kind of the top of our discussion here. It's always been like, the usual pretty costumes and the grace of, the floor exercises, and just also the miraculous athleticism both men and women do as far as gymnastics and the swimming. Actually, particularly with the diving, because we've always wanted to try to dive, but I am scared of the deep end, so I can't do that. But anyway, nevertheless, Jack, why don't you kind of tip us off with leading in with our first little article here?
Yeah, so our first segment is going to be about Simone Biles. I'm sure everyone's heard what happened with her already at this point. It's been all over the internet, with her scratching herself from the Olympic team final and not participating specifically because of mental health, rather than what was speculated originally about it being a physical injury, and specifically how she had a case of what they colloquially called the twisties.
Right. It's like this developed subculture language, along with other references that they had, that was mentioned in the article, of course, a reference, I should say. So the twisties, in a sense, is the gymnast pretty much calling an audible, saying they're having this mental, kind of like a mental break or inability to perform a certain skill that they've done dozens of times prior. So with that type of, I don't know, mental shock or anxiety, just seeing the feats that they perform and the athleticism of it all, I can truly understand why the twisties, in a sense, would occur. So based off that, I know, go ahead, Malty. Yeah.
Proprioception, right? Your ability to understand where you are in space without actually seeing that is an amazing type of ability that we don't really understand how it really works. And I could see how when you're trying to do 2.5 flips in the air, or twists in the air while flipping, and to be able to understand exactly where you are, to know where the ground is to land, that is an amazing feat. And for something to happen, for all of a sudden for you to lose that, would be extremely distressing, I would feel.
Absolutely. Yeah. New keyword for me, proprioception. The ability for one to sense their body's movement in the air and the action and location in which they could, just have some type of perception and location of when they're doing these types of feats. So you're absolutely right. Any take on this for you, Richard?
Yeah, I mean, I've experienced something similar myself, because I used to be a sports person when I was younger. Not to that anywhere near that level, I must add. But I think even in amateur sports, you get those times where you've been rehearsing something time and time again, and you've done it thousands and thousands of times, and then you hit a wall where you just feel you can't do it anymore. And these guys are elite athletes. This is, unless you've kind of even gone anywhere near that level of sportsmanship, you have no idea that hours and hours and the mental stress that the athletes put themselves under, never mind what comes from the outside pressures from the teammates or the team captains. And that fear of letting yourself down and letting others down, it can be heartbreaking.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's exactly what Simone felt. Like, of course, this is, top stage for athletes like this, right? You are competing for, gold, more or less. And you certainly, you have your own individual exercises as far as what gymnastics is concerned, since this is what we're talking about. You have your own floor or individual routines, as they do, also team work as well. So I'm sure, given her young age and the miraculous championships and achievements she's already have made, she's ranked number one as far as holding the world's most championships, whether it be gold, silver, and bronze. She is number one at 24 years old. She has, gone above and beyond us, in a sense. Any normal person, any critic that has to have a say in her pulling herself out just because she recognized that she wasn't mentally there or mentally well enough and felt secure that she would not come out of what she had to do unharmed.
Yeah, I think unharmed is particularly important here, because a lot of people are talking about her mental health as if the main risk is that she would have performed badly. But the main risk is actually that she could have, snapped her neck doing it wrong. Like gymnastics, especially at the levels she's at, if you mess up something like that, you could roll your neck, you can land wrong, break a bone, and that would have left her out for far longer. And she made the decision not to risk injuring herself. I mean, people who pretend to care about her career surely should care about a career-ending injury that she could have sustained if she'd gone out.
Yeah. And there are examples of this happening to these elite athletes, going up when I'm going to blank on her name. The woman who landed her vault on one leg and everyone cheered, and that was the end of her career.
Yeah. Definitely that is one glimmer of an example of several others. It's just it's almost heartbreaking to on two fronts. One, to have that particular person push themselves past to the point where they have to move forward and compete and do what they have to do because of the pressure. And then two, because of said pressure from coaches in the past, from us as audiences viewing from the stands or through our television, thinking that, and this is, in reference to me, Malty, we understand the American mentality of just being, top winners in everything, when that certainly isn't the case presently during the Tokyo Olympics now. I can't recount how many gold, if anything, medals that we have, but all in all, ultimately, does that really matter? No.
Right.
At the risk of, these athletes damaging themselves, injuring themselves for life, or potentially just, dying from it. There's no need to put such risk and hardness on the body in that regard.
And I think there should be much more in place and much less shame attached to coming forward with mental health issues in top sport, in any sports, but especially in top sports like this. There should be no shame in it to say, this is not right for me at this time. I need to take a step back, and not to be shamed by the press, by the supporters of the sport, as if you've done something wrong. You should be allowed to take that time to recoup and to go back into it when you're ready to go back into it.
There definitely has been a shift this century in at least the athletes themselves speaking out, talking about the things that they've experienced. Michael Phelps, as a example, after the 2012 Olympics, was very vocal about his depression and his suicidal ideation that he went through after winning just so many gold medals. And then, like Liz Cambridge, this is a women's basketball player playing for Australia, pulled out of the Tokyo Olympics. And a quote from her: "Relying on daily medication to control my anxiety is not a place I want to be right now, especially walking into competition in the world's biggest sporting stage." So these people are understanding that they are not, when this happens, they want to be able to perform at their highest ability, and if they're not, they have to make a decision. And I think that the International Olympic Committee has responded some. We now have the International Olympics Committee Sports Mental Health Recognition Tool, which has been handed out to which is helpful, I guess, for these coaches and players to be able to look at themselves, look at their teammates, and see if there are warning signs that need to be addressed. So it's a step in the right direction, at least.
Yeah, and I also think we'd be remiss not to comment on who, especially in the media, gets sympathy and who doesn't when we're talking about mental health issues. Like specifically Simone Biles, when you look into like on Twitter, for example, and other places on social media, the amount of responses to her talking about this that are just blatantly racist. And she would have known that when she made the decision to scratch herself, that she was also going to face that amount of racist backlash online, because I'm sure she's used to it at this point in her career, because she's constantly targeted with it. And specifically, like, Black athletes have this kind of dismissal of their mental health. I mean, it happens across all athletics. I don't want to downplay that there is a problem across the board, but specifically Black athletes are ignored more often when they talk about their mental health. And I do think some of that stems back to these kind of racist beliefs that Black people feel less, that are like medicalized, especially among coaches. Like, I'm sure that it's a problem she's experiencing, not only from the wider media, but also from people closer to her and in coaching.
Yeah, and we saw something similar within the recent European Cup finals as well, with the when the two I'm not a follower of football, so I don't know the names, but the two Black England players who missed the penalties, and eventually it cost England the match, and there was so much racist retaliation to that, and those guys were under so much pressure, as it were, and they did not need that. That was unnecessary, and it should have been stamped out.
No, absolutely. And just, adding to what both you, Jack, and Richard are saying, there is some higher level of significance when it comes to the added pressure to Black athletes, especially at the Olympic level. Case in point, Naomi Osaka, the tennis player, just roughly 2 or 3 months ago, she had to withdraw herself from the French Open for similar reasons for Simone Biles, mental health reasons. And, classically, Serena Williams, well-known, famed for her sportsmanship, she's often shamed because of her body, literally just because of her body. That's most of what the criticism that pulls from her, on top of, other recent stuff. But for as long as I've known of both her and her sister, Venus, when they performed and they were, would play and everything on, Open, French Open, Olympic level, things like that, it would always just be pure body shaming. That's it. And just, making that point to just belittle their athleticism for no reason. And, to touch on that, as far as what you mentioned earlier, Jack, in reference to the Twitter criticism, I like to reference, our UK finest mansplainer, Piers Morgan. He put out a tweet the moment, our dear Simone Biles had to withdraw from the competition. Pretty much the tweet read, "Are mental health issues now the go-to excuse for any poor performance in elite sport? What a joke." Seriously? Like, this is really the characterization that you're going to propose, as far as, belittling the fact that not only this well-performed, well-decorated young woman has already accomplished so much. She owes you fucking nothing. And you criticize her for recognizing that, if I go out there, I'm going to hurt myself.
Yeah, I think a really sad part of that tweet by Piers Morgan as well was with the last line where he puts, kids need strong role models. And, if you go and watch on a Saturday or a Sunday in Britain, the kids with the soccer moms, putting them under so much pressure, and shouting, and sometimes even being abusive to the officials in the football game. That is not what they need. That is the last thing they need, those strong role models who are just going to put them under more and more mental health pressure from such an early age. 7 and 8 year old, some of these kids are.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't know about everyone else, but personally, the role model I want for children is to see people at this kind of elite sport saying, you know what, I'm not going to burn myself out just for random other people. I want Simone Biles to be a role model for a long time. I don't want her to get a career-ending injury because she's being put under so much pressure by everyone else. I want her to have the longest career she can have and keep being a role model.
Yeah. I'm happy to see that there has been pressure and some change in the gymnastics community, somewhat to Simone, because I mean, she undoubtedly is one of the greatest of all time, but also because of the internet and where the gymmernet, as they're calling it. There's a podcast called Gymtastic, and it has been relentless over the past, say, 6 years in pushing the radical ideas of like psychological abuse of athletes is bad, and that taking care of your mental health is important. And that if you have just a little bit of body fat, so you look like a natural person, that is okay. You don't have to be 2% body fat as a female in their 20s. So all of these changes, I think, are leading towards some better changes.
Oh, absolutely. And I recall, as many of us are aware, I should say, the pressure of competition, especially for female gymnasts, was hard. Was definitely seen through the gymnasium that was located and shut down in Texas through and I'm going to pronounce this wrong, the Kedlioli family. They were, of course, the older couple that were in connection to Lesser, the now committed sexual offender that sexually offended and raped and everything else gruesome to so many female gymnasts for periods of years. And so to my understanding, of course, their compound is shut down and they no longer practice good. But it was tradition and it was knowledge within that compound of how much they were worked and how much they could not show any type of lower than the best standard when it came to practice, when it came to actual competition itself, how much that older couple pushed each and every girl that they had within their compound, within their group, to do their best. And so many came out injured. The one case in regards to, I know her first name is Carrie, and I can't recall her last name, back in the late 80s or early 90s, where she felt something wrong with obviously her tendon or lower ankle. And, she went out and was pushed to perform anyway. And lo and behold, she landed on a certain move or routine in her balance meet performance and snapped her ACL. And that was it. Young. And that's just career ending right there. And I think that's what exactly you were referencing, Malty. It's this type of, and thank you, Carrie Strug was the gymnast. So it's this type of, I don't know what you call it, just evil, ugly.
Win at all cost, yeah.
Exactly. Win at all cost mentality that I think we should definitely be more reflective of and really teach and promote that, when you're not feeling well, and coaches should demonstrate this, that they should listen to their athletes and make sure that they're okay. I think being at this level is, for us as audiences, is important enough to see such, Olympic status people perform at such feats that we can never in our life do. I know I certainly can't. And apart from the criticism from Piers Morgan, just from the common community itself through the Twitter sphere, just the vitriol of, oh, she's not a winner, or, oh, she's this or that. Come on, I don't see your gold medal. I don't see you pushing your body to feats where I see you do 2 spins in the air. I think we take too much and push and ask for too much of these athletes. And I'm sure all of us would agree that we definitely need to change our perspective on it.
Exactly.
Yeah. More of a humanist perspective, maybe?
Yeah, certainly. Any final takes on that? I know we still have a lot more to cover as far as the Olympic side is concerned, but I want to get some last words if you have any.
Yeah, I think overall in sports of all natures, at all levels, barring chess, where you're not really going to get many physical injuries, but there's still the mental side of it. There needs to be more openness and more ability to be able to say, look, I am struggling, and for someone to be there and to take it seriously.
Yeah, exactly. And these athletes need to be not treated both as disposable and being glamorized at the same time. It just means they're put through the maximum amount of pressure and they're thrown away the fastest that they can as it currently stands. I mean, instead of having a constant influx of new athletes, let's take care of the ones that are already here, make sure they have long careers, and look after them. I want to see more of that. I don't want to see this kind of attitude towards them, especially from people online like Piers Morgan and other people on Twitter who kind of see it as, you know, like these athletes, like we give them everything, we make them famous, and therefore they owe us. They don't owe anyone shit. You know, you don't have to tune in. No one's making you. And I think a lot of these people, in fact, I would wager the majority, aren't even watching these events in the Olympics. They just want to comment on something that's relevant, and therefore they kind of let out their anger at these people who they see as public figures and not even as people. And I hope that we see less of that, but I mean, the algorithm promotes it.
Yeah, yep. Unfortunately so. Malty, you had something?
Well, I'll just end with a quote from Simone. It's the Olympic Games, but at the end of the day, it's like we want to walk out of here, not be dragged out of here on a stretcher. So, yeah, I mean, that's it.
Oh, yeah. Simone Biles' final word, definitely. Before we continue on into our second segment, of course, if all of you viewing us in YouTube and of course our listeners on the AEN podcast, if you appreciate and like what we're talking about, please like and subscribe to this channel. Leave us a comment if you want to continue further discussion on this. What are your criticisms? What are your takes on what we discussed so far? And of course, throughout the rest of the show, let us know in the comment section below. And we certainly value your feedback as well. You know, you can send us an email at nonprofits@atheist-community.org. And if you haven't already done so, please go ahead and continue to view us on a regular basis each Sunday afternoon at 3 p.m. Central as we premiere. And actually, last I checked, we are almost nearing the home stretch of 9K subscribers. That is freaking awesome. So super fantastic for that, and we appreciate your viewership and you supporting us so that we can go ahead and reach that 10K goal. And so I don't know why I put an accent on that. I've run away with my language. Anyways, so to help us, of course, reach that 10K goal, share this link to our channel with your friends, family, coworkers, neighbors. You know, just go ahead and like your neighbor today and just hate them tomorrow. Just make sure they're already subscribed to the channel before you hate them, though. Okay, so that way we get those numbers and we can go ahead and participate in charity donations. Okay, and of course, just continue to support us by shopping if you utilize Amazon at smile.amazon.com and selecting the Atheist Community of Austin as the beneficiary. If you find yourself already shopping there, of course, we definitely appreciate it. And of course, you can donate directly to us through our Patreon. Become a patron at patreon.com/thenonprofits. Really appreciate it. So, that all being said, with our segment, still continuing on this discussion on the Olympics, of course, not all news has been good. And, putting aside the criticisms of Simone Biles, the rest of the women in our Olympics have been standing up for themselves and, affirming their right to remove the over-sexualization of the sport, of just being in the Olympic Games itself. Our main article here references a Norwegian beach handball team, no less, where written in the rules of the federation, there is a very descriptive critique of what the beach handball team's uniform should be. It's basically bikini bottoms. I'm not going to go in full details with the measurement. By all means, click on the link and read through it yourselves. very intricate, but basically it's booty shorts with, you know, your cheeks out. All right. So, and obviously for a long time, and particularly with this Norwegian beach handball team, they've been wanting to change their uniform. I mean, rightly so. I mean, I'm not comfortable with always showing my booty cheeks. So, I mean, hey. So they initially asked the Olympic, I guess you can say, committee to change their bikini bottoms out to just shorts. Now, for men in this same sport, they can wear similar shorts to what this Norwegian women's team has done. No, I would say no less than 4 inches from above their knee, and realistically, that's what, of course, this female team has done. So once they kept being denied from the committee to do so, not even given the option, like it was just a mandate to just have booty cheek shorts, they went ahead and just changed it anyway. And now and after doing so, they were pressed with a fine. I think roughly about $179 per teammate, which is around close to $1,000 as a whole as a team, or excuse me, $2,000 as a whole as a team. Like I can't understand and imagine why the set standard would be, you gotta wear these shorts. Why can't I wear longer shorts? Someone help me.
Sure. In the rules of the game, that the athlete's uniform and accessories contribute to help athletes increase their performance as well as remain coherent to the sportiveness and attractive image of the sport.
Oh, attractive
So
image.
Yeah.
so I mean, yes, I was flabbergasted when I saw the different uniforms for men and women. The men's shorts can't be too baggy, and have to be cannot go 10 centimeters or 4 inches. Have to be 4 inches above the knee. Whereas, yeah, like you said, the women uniform is bikini bottoms. I don't understand how that in any way adds to either of those, because what they're talking about is there's an interesting scoring in this sport, in that a regular goal is 1 point. If it's a what do they say, I'm sorry, the 2 point goal is awarded if there is a special thing going on. A spin is put on the throw, or if it is somehow outrageous in some way, that can give more points. What you're dressed as, the clothes you're wearing, in no way contributes or detracts from this. So I don't understand it.
Are you trying to suggest, Malty, that bikini bottoms with a close fit and an upward angle towards the top of the leg don't contribute to your spinning in the air?
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
yeah, I mean they've got a funny idea of aerodynamics.
yeah, certainly do.
Yeah,
it seems bizarre to me. The shorts that the men wear would by no means take away the attractiveness of the ladies in any way, shape, or form. So, and it certainly has no sporting benefit to wearing bikini bottoms over shorts, as far as the game itself is concerned. So, what is the problem? It just seems crazy.
I am happy that it became viral, in that Pink picked up this and tweeted out that they were happy to pay the €1,500 or $1,700 fine that the team acquired because of the wearing of bicycle shorts instead of the bikini bottoms, and just the attention that brought with her millions of subscribers is a good way of putting pressure on the International Handball Federation to change these rules.
Yeah, I mean, this seems to have gone unnoticed for years, right? While they were campaigning to change this. I think for people who are criticizing them, saying, you know, they should have followed the rules, well, they did everything by the book for years and were continuously ignored. This kind of direct action is the only way they were going to make any change. And it seems to be doing at least something, in that we're all talking about it now and people are talking about it online. So that's at least doing something. But I mean, I am appalled by it. And also, I mean, in it, they're talking about how they have concerns about this discouraging women from Muslim majority countries. Although I think that focus is probably way too specific, because this is going to affect anyone from, say, a conservative Christian background or any kind of conservative background, where if there is an expectation of modesty, and that is the image they have of the sport. Like when they talk about the attractive image of the sport, they are talking about beach handball as a whole. If you have a sport and the most like elite version of that is portrayed at the Olympics, that's what people think of when they think of a sport. When we think of sprinting, we're not thinking of like the local high school that does that. We're thinking of the Olympics. And the same thing applies here. People are watching that on TV. They see people in these outfits, and say their young child comes to them and they're a conservative family, and they say, oh, I want to do beach handball. And they're like, but those women are wearing no clothes. Like, no, you can't do beach handball. I mean, we're missing out on like tons of athletes who maybe would have enjoyed this, or even at a lower level, just kids being able to participate in the sport. Who cares if they never make it to Olympic level? Maybe they would have enjoyed this. I mean, we're always talking about how people need to be more athletic, healthier. I mean, when you're talking about health of the country and getting kids involved in sport, why aren't we making it so that these sports are accessible to them and not bizarrely sexualized like this? I can't see any other reason to have them wearing that specific outfit other than to sexualize them. I don't see any benefit to it. And I mean, as much as also everyone's talking about how we should have different uniforms, I think I would posit that either the women's team are given more options, or we put the men in the bikini bottoms. That'd be fair.
Oh yeah.
No.
The hammocks?
No.
Banana
No,
hammocks.
banana hammocks. Yeah.
Anyone? Definitely.
No.
The thing is,
It's one or the other.
all joking aside, uniforms are very important in sport. You know, you've got to have them to differentiate from one team from another. But like everybody on this panel said already, there seems to be no rhyme, no reason as to these rules and as to why they've come down so heavily on them, and why they wouldn't just let them change to start with. Why has there had to be years of campaigning for it? Why haven't they just turned around when they first had an issue with it and said, you know what, that's a reasonable request, go ahead?
Yeah,
It's almost like the people that are writing these rules are not in close touch with the people that are actually playing the games.
right, exactly. And actually, dialing back to this same article, there was a reference that, you know, it seems rather poignant for the women's team to be forced by the rule to wear this particular uniform of bikini bottom booty cheeks shorts. I'm just going to call them booty cheek shorts. And when the men, sometime earlier on before the competition, were permitted to have the ability to alter theirs. Interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder why they were granted, you know, the open option to have that alternative wear, and the women, you know, nope, you got to pay us some money. You got to pay to not play at this point. And this poses a question for me, because towards the end, the Federation pretty much took onto themselves to look into the uniform policy for both genders, quote unquote, as they state. Does this significant effort pose a better reflection to the Federation, or will this be seen as just, you know, too little too late? Like, they granted the men their permission and leeway to have an alternative option, but they didn't enforce a fine on these women. And now, after all of these social media force and aggression against them and criticism against them, now they're like, oh, well, we'll look at the policy for both genders and take into consideration of changes.
They need to acknowledge the specifics of how they have harmed the women in this situation, not just because of forcing them to wear this, not just because they've put them through years of having to campaign, that the men have not had to go through, and the fact that the policy is only a problem for the women in the first place. But also the fact that there are other things that, I mean, I haven't really seen widely talked about, but I think it's important to note. We talk a lot about like the wealth gap between certain women's sports and men's sports, right? And the pay issue. What we don't actually talk about is things like this are prohibitive for women in sport in terms of the extra cost. For example, people aren't going to go out and wear those shorts, especially with how high cut they are, without getting some kind of bikini wax beforehand. And that costs money. They're paying for them. Like it's crude to talk about, but that's what's going on. They're not going to go out there with all of those cameras during the Olympics without having to do some extra kind of personal grooming, which I feel like is infringing on them, because it's not just the clothes they're wearing, but it's also what they have to do to their body before the event. And sure, they can say that they're not technically mandating that they go and shave or get a wax, but that is essentially what they have to do to not be criticized massively worldwide. And that costs them extra money. And that is a cost the men's team has never had to incur, not once historically. And therefore, over that time, those women have been incurring extra costs as athletes, and a lot of them aren't particularly well paid. So this is like an additional cost that they're incurring, or that the people around them are incurring to like do this for them. I mean, like, it's a problem that needs to be noted. And I think in this particular case with this team, but maybe more broadly, they need to do more than just review the policy and change it now, but they probably need to compensate these women.
Yeah, and do we think that perhaps that, and far be it from me to speculate, but of the 20 members of the IHF, who are the council, the decision-making body basically in this sport, only 3 of them have female representation. That's quite a strong ratio of male to female on the decision-making council. And I can't help but feel that that might have something to do with the kind of push to keep women in these bikinis that they're in, rather than adopting a more sensible approach.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you raise a fair point. And also, in addition to this, you know, as another statement against sexualization is demonstrated also in the women's German gymnastics team, where they transitioned to wearing full body unitards, just to demonstrate themselves as, you know, we're not wearing these tight, high rising fitted onesies. Now they've transitioned to actually pretty beautiful looking unitards, still functional, still serves its purpose, and they still profess their strength and athleticism within their uniform.
Yeah, I really enjoyed what the German gymnastics, one of the German gymnastics competitors said, Elizabeth Seitz. We want to show it's about what we feel comfortable in. We want to show that every woman, everybody should decide what they want to wear. Changed what she said a little bit, but that's the gist of it. Yeah, the outfits, they're making statements that gymnastics should de-emphasize the sexualization and emphasize the athleticism.
Right, precisely. And there was an interesting pushed article from our producer that recognized, you know, the difference in the floor exercises when it comes to women gymnasts and men gymnasts. And it's so funny just reading the article and thinking on it for myself, because I used to watch along with my sister since we were young. You know, our favorite was the gymnastic floor exercises and balance beams and all that. It was just wonderful to us. But definitely did not take a notice that men don't have music playing while they're doing their floor exercises, but women do. And it didn't hit me until reading this article. And I'm like, holy shit, you're right. Women have been having music to their floor exercises and men absolutely not. And even further of the point that not only did, you know, obviously women not being able to be a part of the Olympics until the late 1920s, as far as having female gymnasts and gymnasts is concerned, but women's floor exercises are at least 20 seconds longer than men floor exercises are. They're a full 90 seconds versus, you know, 20 seconds less than men, and that could be due in part because it's just all in silence and they're doing whatever they do. Whereas, with the floor exercises initially, as thought of back then, was seen as displaying the grace and femininity of gymnasts, female gymnasts, and, how beautiful and flexible and how they can just dance for us, and to this whimsical music. And that almost made me kind of sick just thinking about it at that point. But I mean, at the same time, and I can see the argument on the opposite side, well, I didn't see any harm with having the music, minus the lack of knowledge of the historicity behind it. But it is nice to, have the music as they do what they do. Is it not?
Yeah, but I mean, there's also the point that, like, it's not just that the men don't have music, it's also that they can't. So say one of the men wanted to perform in that kind of way, they're being stopped from doing so. If they enjoy that, right, if they think that those routines look better, if they feel like they'd perform better, especially like given that following along with the music gives you cues that you don't have without it. I mean, this could be a case where you can point out that the men are denied the ability to, and then you've got women being forced to, so they can't perform in the same way that some of these men do. It stops there being collaboration across. And we see this a lot in the way that they segregate certain sports, is that not only are they separated out, but also people can't collaborate across the way. It stops male gymnasts and female gymnasts from talking to each other and giving advice in the same way, because now they do their routines slightly differently, and it changes their ability to share tips across the board and to like form solidarity with each other, I guess, which I suppose is convenient for them, considering how they treat their gymnasts. The less of them there are together to collectively bargain, the easier it is to dispose of them when they feel like it.
No, fair point. I will make an extra adage. Before I do, if Richard or Malty, you have a final statement here, and then I'll lead into something that was very significant to see as far as the Olympic sports have been going on.
Yeah, I'd just like to see. Sorry, Malta. I'd just like to see this new committee's been elected in August. I think it is. I think that's when they're taking over, and hopefully they'll be females will be much better represented on that committee, and it'll help the sport move forward in what seems, reading that article, is a much needed way.
Yeah, and I guess I just wanted to reiterate what we were hearing from the German gymnastics team, and that they wanted to be clear that it's not that they've changed their uniform as a blanket statement. They want to feel comfortable. Whatever at that point in time that they are wearing in competition is comfortable is what they want to wear. On competition day, they said that they will decide if they were going to go with a traditional or this full body suit, and that's up to the individual gymnast and their comfortability. How comfortable they are in wearing that clothes is the deciding factor, not what that's what it should be. It shouldn't be anything else.
Yeah, comfortability, exactly. And taking that word from you, and a story that came out of the Olympics that bothered me the most as far as, comfortability. There was a ban on a particular swim cap that's primarily and preferably worn by Black athletes with natural hair. This was a judgment brought down from the International Swimming Federation, in which they expressed their reasons for not certifying a particular brand of swim cap known as Soul Cap. And for years, this particular company dedicated its marketing towards Black swimmers that wear their natural hair. And I'll state a quote from that federation in part of their reasoning. So they state, and I quote, "The Soul swim caps, specifically used by people with long, voluptuous, and afro hair, were barred by the Federation because," end quote, "to the best of their knowledge, the athletes competing at that international event never used, neither required to use caps of such size and configuration." And that is utter ignorance. They don't even realize what swimmers they have within their committee, within their federation. Of course, you have Black athlete swimmers. Of course, they utilize this. It's for comfortability. It's for functionality. Having natural hair and trying to be a swimmer, I can't tell you as a young kid having to swim in chlorine water with my natural hair, how much it damaged my hair, how much care and uptake it takes. But I won't go on too much on a rant on that, because this is something that did initially upset me, and it seems unreasonable for them to refute or knock down their certification. But to the success of this particular company, and I'll end it with this, SoulCap has received overwhelming support. In fact, they've seen such an increase in their sales of their product that they have to tell their buyers that there is a bit of like a 2 to 3 week delay just to, meet the demand. So, hooray for them for, attributing this as a positive, and also for them to wanting to bridge a conversation about inclusiveness within Olympic sport, and recognizing that all athletes of every ethnicity should be represented. And that is my TED Talk. Thank you. But before we move on into our third segment, let's just take a breather and move into our little commercial break. Yeah, I think we will move into our commercial break. Yes.
You're like a sex archaeologist.
I'm turning into a historian.
You're like the Indiana Jones of the sex worker industry.
I think some people have a sustainable amount of Dan, and I'm a limited resource.
I need more Dan in my life.
The tenets are a little vaguer than the commandments. Doesn't mention my neighbor's ass in the tenets, which is always on my mind.
I know. I'm reading the Atheist's Handbook to the Old Testament right now. I'm not listening to the audiobook that Seth did, because I don't need to be like aroused while listening to this book. Yeah.
I'm probably not going to tell you off, Matt. I do want to give you some critical feedback.
You can, and I don't mind.
Fine.
I did it. It was fun.
So, welcome back for a little brief commercial break here. So in this third segment, it's a bit of a special that we have as far as reflecting on a past episode of the Nonprofits, but I will go ahead and preface this and attribute it as our special Looking Back.
Looking Back.
And I want to go ahead and start off this segment first by showing our first clip from episode 20.15.15, however you want to phrase it, back in April with our other panel of hosts. So we'll go ahead and take a look at that first clip first, and then we'll dive on into the conversation.
Jesus never hung out with sinners or tax collectors or prostitutes or any of that stuff. He only hung out with the very best.
With cis white guys.
Yeah, all white blonde dudes living in the Middle East.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So this is interesting. So that she attended Bob Jones University highlights the limits of religious exemptions under the law. And this is where I'd be really interested to see where this case goes. In the 1970s, the IRS took away Bob Jones University's tax-exempt status because they banned interracial dating, probably for religious reasons too. The school argued to the Supreme Court that the IRS was violating its religious freedom because it had a sincerely held religious belief against religious dating. In the 1983 decision, Bob Jones University versus the United States, the Supreme Court ruled that the First Amendment did not give BJU the right to have a racist policy and get money from the government in the form of a tax-exempt status. The Supreme Court specified that their decision is applicable only with religious schools, not with churches or other purely religious organizations.
Fantastic. So that was our very own Johnny P. Angel, referencing a Supreme Court decision concerning Bob Jones University and how they were removed of their tax exemption back in the day. And we preface this leading into a current issue that's happening at our very wonderful Liberty University. And Malty, if you can please explain what's going on there.
At Liberty University, yes, there's been class action lawsuits filed. Multi-plaintiff, 12 women have filed a lawsuit against Liberty, accusing the university of creating a, quote, unsafe campus environment that increases the likelihood of sexual assault and rape. They say that the Liberty Way, which is the standard code of conduct that Liberty University would like their students and faculty to adhere to, it creates a weaponized honor code that makes it either difficult or impossible for students to report sexual violence. It promotes a widely observed policy that condones sexual violence, especially by male athletic students, and has caused retaliation against women who report being victims of sexual violence.
Wow. Okay. So, yes, as you stated, there is a current lawsuit pressing with these 12 Jane Doe women in regards to Liberty University, and it's touching upon their weird school conduct of the Liberty Way. And I kind of browsed through that, conduct agreement or whatever they want to phrase it or formulate it. It's very pointed, obviously, of its Christian religious views as far as, not allowing consensual sex or non-consensual sex outside of marriage, not having two separate genders in the same room alone, and yada, yada, yada. The breakdown of the actual 3 ways in which Liberty University has created an unsafe campus environment, they characterize as the creation and weaponization of the Liberty Way, a student honor code, as we mentioned, that's making it increasingly difficult and impossible for students to report sexual violence. 2, the promotion of a widely observed policy that condones sexual violence, especially by male athletes, as you have just stated, Malty. And 3, the public and repeated retaliation that these women have faced. And they're just reporting these sexual altercations or non-consensual altercations that have been, done to them. Just mere reporting, and they're met with retaliation. I don't understand why there is difficulty in this.
No, and the Liberty Way was they seem to be using that as some kind of defense against these allegations. As Jena mentioned, the cited inappropriate personal contact or visiting alone with people of the opposite sex. And I don't understand why the university is using this in its defense. It's not being accused of unmarried students engaging in normal, teenage behavior. It's being accused of allowing sexual assault. It's a completely different thing. And the fact that the university doesn't seem to understand the difference between these two things is exceptionally concerning to me.
Yeah,
they don't. Go ahead, Jack, please.
Yeah, exactly. I think part of the huge problem here is that it's the only recourse students have to go through the university, because in terms of their immediate safety when assaulted within the university, going to the police, even if we imagine that they experience one of the minority of cases where the police actually take them seriously from the beginning, which isn't most people's experience reporting sexual assault to law enforcement, even then, the law enforcement can do nothing to remove that person from the university. That person, during the ongoing case, will still be attending the university with them, knowing they've been reported to the police. It encourages them to retaliate. It encourages them to assault them further. They have no recourse to protect themselves if the university isn't aware. And also, it's pretty likely that if the police do open an investigation, the university is informed anyway. So they are pressured also by law enforcement and the failure of them to talk to the university about this. Because theoretically, if the university is aware, and in a world where you're also able to report and be taken seriously, the university can remove that student from your presence. They can make sure that you don't come across them in your schooling, because we shouldn't be making a situation where people who are sexually assaulted are continuously unsafe being at that university. But that's what happens. And here, these same students who are doing the exact thing they need to do to protect themselves are being punished further. They're now in a position where the person who assaulted them knows they've been reported. So that encourages backlash, that encourages them to terrorize their victim even further. But also on top of that, the university is punishing them as a victim equally to their abuser, if not more, for having been the one who said something. If anything, it encourages a culture of silence around it, because if you're assaulted, you are better off in that scenario doing absolutely nothing than you are reporting it to the university, because instead of just not helping, they actively are making it worse, according to everything I've read here.
Yeah. Dialing back a little bit, the reason that we started with the clip from Johnny back on the 20.15 episode, which premiered on April 11th, was because Liberty University is also a part of a class action lawsuit by the Religious Exemption and Accountability Project, which has, 33 students that are a part of its lawsuit. According to this suit, that the people of LGBTQ plus orientation have been subject to abusive behavior by these universities, including conversion therapy, expulsion, denial of housing and healthcare, sexual and physical abuse, and harassment. So what the REAP Accountability Project, REAP, is not going against actually the universities, which Liberty University and I think, what's the big Mormon University?
Oh wow! I can't even think of the name.
Doesn't matter. Well,
it doesn't matter.
The Brigham Young one.
Brigham Young. Yes, I was thinking Brigham
Young,
and also
there you go.
Baylor is a part of it. In that they, this is actually going against the Department of Education, saying that these universities should be stripped of their Title IX status, of their tax exemption, because of this behavior. And what we're seeing now with this lawsuit, again, is part and parcel. It's the same damn thing, but just a different version, it seems like.
Yeah, precisely. And in regards to Title IX, that is a federal law that states, and I quote, "No person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in and or be denied the benefits of anything in regards to being subjected to discrimination under any education program or activity receiving federal financial assistance." And before we move on with that discussion, I want to play our final clip from that episode back in April. This is a little tidbit from J. Mike and Laura McGee.
Yeah, where's the humanity nested within taking a loophole to where you don't have to protect the group of people that attend your institution? Like, like it's crazy to me that it's like, hey, we can just nest our bigotry right into. You said it's Title IX, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just nest your bigotry right in there. I mean, to go in there and to see that. I mean, how joyful do you think the first people to implement that and to go, hey, there's a preventative measure to have to prevent gay kids and trans people to come into our school. It's like, I mean, you have to really be some sort of evil, and from my perspective, to really even to hide behind that legislation like that.
I don't know. I get the religious organizations hiding behind it. Like I disagree again, but I kind of understand the mentality. What I really don't get is the government oversight. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So in my opinion, it's like, look, if you've already determined that this is a human rights and a civil rights issue for everybody else in every other organization. How dare you not see it as a civil rights issue for this one particular organization?
Yeah, exactly that. It's basically the malpractice is evident here as far as the Liberty University weaponizing the Title IX in a way to effectively when the school itself is weighted, investigations of sexual assault is presented to them over the excuse claims of male students over the, coming forward of these young women in regards to the sexual abuse in light of actually these women presenting physical evidence, photos, text messages, and the like. So I pose this question. What sorts of humiliation and negative feedback does this kind of handling ultimately present? There is no safety within these Christian schools that want to hold on to their tax exempt status. Should they be removed? I'm answering my own question.
Yeah, I would be happy to see the tax exempt status removed with this type of behavior. I mean, when you have people, one of the Jane Does that was interviewed by in this article had said that they had photographs of the bruising that occurred due to the sexual assault, but because those photographs were of a intimate nature, they were removed from the case file and were not allowed to be used by the person that had been assaulted in their own defense. So yeah, I see no reason for these universities to continue to have the protection of Title IX or the exemption of Title IX. There's no reason.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. These women have been subject to such horrific abuse. And one of the plaintiffs said she was subject to pervasive and systematic sexual harassment by a supervisor, and it had already been reported by another one of the plaintiffs, but no action was taken against him because this just blows my mind. The university found him wholly credible because he was a man of God, and that was enough for them to put it to bed. That to me just it goes beyond belief.
Yeah, it sounds like fucking Sharia law.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, people who have conducted these internal investigations, right? Or, I mean, I hesitate to even call them investigations because they're so shoddy. Also need to face consequences here. Like the fact that they are investigating in this way. I mean, it's bad enough the way that we see these things handled criminally in terms of the questioning that victims get in a way that they don't get for other types of assault. If you go to the police for a sexual assault versus another type of assault, you're going to be questioned much more thoroughly and you're going to be treated much more like you're lying. But the fact that the university is applying an even stricter standard than they're applying criminally to these people, to these women who are coming forward about having been assaulted, and that they're coming from a position of making them prove that they didn't break their code, rather than a position of, you're coming to us with this information that you've been assaulted and we're going to investigate that as a claim. It's mind-boggling. And the people who've done that, I mean, that's more than negligent at that point. That's actively malicious.
Yeah, there's 6 actual counts to the suit. I can go through them if you like a little bit.
Yes, please do.
So that they're, as speaking to what Jack just said, count 1 is pre-assault, deliberate indifference and a hostile environment. That's what the Liberty University is being accused of. And then post-assault, deliberate indifference. Count 3, a hostile environment, retaliation, and negligence. So, yeah, this is I wish I could say it was surprising.
No, it just sounds like an open and shut case to me. That's it. I mean, the continued discouragement from this university to these women, just because they were doing as they were told in regards to Title IX, they took and abided by the process of Title IX to protect themselves. And, this was the only guidance and hope that they have. And yet they were still met with and subjected to humiliation. It's just, as I said, open and shut case. And to have this university insinuate that there was no negative consequence applied to these women. And in their statement to the press, they were like, oh, if this is true, then it's awfully, discouraging and sad. And I'm like, come on, really, just stop sugarcoating your bullshit. It's clear that there is, obvious wrong within a Liberty Way code that you just need to be fucking removed. Sorry, I have a potty mouth, but we're well over 2 minutes.
Well-deserved potty mouth in this instance, though, because this attitude of the university from the outset seems to, it's not just protecting the abusers, but it's also penalizing the victims. And, one of them have even had to be made to undergo spiritual guidance after making the complaint. That's just ridiculous.
Yeah. And another was after being bringing forth that they had been given a roofie drug in a glass of wine, was then counseled or criticized, penalized for drinking. So, yeah.
Well, okay. All right.
So
let's breathe. Inhale, everyone. Inhale. Exhale. Shake off the evil voodoo. Shake off the bad. Shake it off.
With Liberty University, this place is. That was Jerry Falwell Jr., right? He's gone.
Yeah, that's right.
So that this place, I hope new management can come in.
Or just shut it down.
It's interesting the reason why Jerry Falwell Jr. actually went, though, because he fell foul of the university himself after allegedly. This is the guy who's I think he was the son of the guy who set up the university and was the principal for a while, and he actually allegations were made about him that he'd been in a voyeur in a relationship between his wife and a younger business partner. So it seems that their abstinence policies could have been practiced at the top of the food chain before they start implementing them on the students.
Gosh. Good point. Very good point. And, there's so much more that can be said, but I've had my fill. Thank you. No more food for me. Let's end on a higher note, shall we? Richard, tell us how we can, be eco-friendly when we die.
Oh, this is brilliant. You know what? I love this article. I'm a bit of an old hippie at heart, and I quite like this. I think it's a nice idea, and it's a little bit corny, but it's a little bit romantic as well. And you can be cremated and have your ashes put in an urn and be put into the ground with the trees and help fuel the trees' growth for future generations. And
be one with Mother Gaia.
But what the thing that makes me laugh about this, there are lots and lots of companies doing this. But there's one particular company who've designed the Capsula Mundi. And it's created by Italian designers Raul Bretzel and Anna Citelli. Nah, it's organic and fully biodegradable, but it's essentially a giant egg. And that to me, it makes me laugh. I saw the photograph of it and I just could not stop laughing. And it takes all the romance out of it when you're being put in the ground in a giant ostrich egg. Let's face it.
I mean, we came into this world from an egg. We go out of this world in an egg. Full circle.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if anyone else did a deep dive into this, but I did because I'm deeply cynical about eco-friendly solutions.
Oh yeah,
and I found exactly what I expected to find, which is that this is worse for the environment than basically any other burial option, other than being buried in a coffin that has metal parts on it, because you have to be cremated to do it, which is a massive CO2 release into the environment. You have to be cremated already and then put into this egg they've created, as Richard was talking about. But what they don't mention is this egg is not only made of biodegradable plastic, but also it's built to degrade slowly because the ashes would be toxic to the soil otherwise. So it slowly releases the ashes, which are dangerous to the tree, in amounts small enough that the tree doesn't absorb too many of them too fast to kill it. So I don't know about this eco-friendly solution here. I feel like, and it's much less romantic and much less sweet to imagine, but the actual way to be environmentally friendly about this is to just get wrapped up in a tarp and put in the ground 3 feet deep. Just that's the actual eco-friendly option, and it's not as fun. It's not as nice to look at. It's not as enjoyable to imagine. Being cremated and put into an egg for people who like that. Apparently, Richard finds that fun, but I don't know. I don't know about that. I don't think it's so great for the environment.
Yeah. Hashtag not really saving the trees.
Oh, as I listened to Richard, first I imagined an egg that was large enough for me in fetal position to be, surrounded.
Oh, that's
next. It actually gets down to being something that is this big.
Good point.
The size of an ostrich egg. However, there are other options between cremation, burial after being totally embalmed, and at least in some places. Of course, you can always donate your body to science, which gets some use out of it. You are filled with formaldehyde. You will be cremated. So both of those toxic and climate change producing things are going on in that. However, there is one place, Washington State, where bodies now are being able to be composted. There are 2 different places where, at the marginal cost of around $1,000, you can be put in a cylinder with some sawdust, and friends and family are welcome to put flowers or other biodegradables upon your corpse, which is then sealed in this container. The container is rolled. You know those things that you have for composting at home, that the kind of things that you rotate every once in a while after putting your food scraps in?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's a giant one of those.
Okay.
Made for bodies.
Yeah, it's a great mental image.
And I guess it only takes 2 weeks, and then you get your family and friends get a cubic yard of compost that they can use for both food or other types of plants. So this is something that is an option. Better than so in a traditional burials in the U.S. Use about 800,000 gallons of embalming fluid a year. The caskets that have steel parts and stuff, you're looking at about 90,000 tons of metal parts. That's about enough. This is per year, but it is enough to build the Golden Gate Bridge. It's a lot of steel. But so these things that don't need embalming or don't need cremation, I think is one way where you can kind of get around all those negative aspects. So
yeah,
go for it, Washington State.
Oh yeah, well, good on you. And fun fact, Luke Perry died in 2019, was buried in an eco-friendly mushroom suit. So that's an option, whatever that looks like.
So his suit was infused with mushroom spores to then break him down?
Yes.
What is a mushroom suit?
I'm sure whatever it looks like is nothing like the mental image I have of it.
Oh, dang it, Richard. I have it.
Oh my gosh.
Now I have. Okay, moving on. So
I think, yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jack. I can't.
Yeah, I think a lot of these kind of imagined eco-friendly options. I mean, like, I think if it brings someone joy, like say someone knows that they're going to die, and while they're making funeral plans, this makes them feel better about that, right? This brings them comfort. I think go for it. We all do things that aren't very eco-friendly all the time. This other option, not really being eco-friendly, doesn't necessarily mean people shouldn't ever do it. If someone really wants to, I don't see why not. It's not that much worse than cremation, and I mean there are various options there. I think, to be honest, if you're being cremated without a coffin, which you would in this scenario, it's probably about even as being cremated in one. So when we're looking at it like that, I don't think it's quite as bad. But I do think that maybe it's more about, instead of this focus on specifically eco-friendly options for body disposal, because that's usually people who want to get like closer to nature and feel like their loved one is still with them to some extent. The idea of having the tree there afterwards. I think probably what would sate that same need is if, instead of doing that, they tried different options for funerals and different options for the grieving process in the first place. Like, we know that, I mean, in the US and also in the UK where I am, there's kind of this culture of like, when someone dies, they're immediately taken away and embalmed and cremated. Maybe you have a viewing, maybe you have open casket, but they are removed from the house immediately, rather than like spending some time with the body and really processing the death. I think that would probably satisfy the same need that people have, right? Where they want to have a way to process the death of their loved one. Maybe it's about changing the culture we have around death in the first place, rather than coming up with these like unique burial options that seem shocking or different.
Yeah, no, you make a fair point, because this actually jogged something that I thought about a little bit within my family, of course, that are Christian. My mother always instilled in my sister and I that, and I've been to too many funerals to know and experience this, that it's always important to stay up until you see the casket fully in the ground and covered in dirt. So you are ensured that your loved one is exactly where you left them. And so, you know, obviously people have their feelings as far as being close to a dead body. I, as a healthcare professional, when I, some years ago, as I first started off as a nurse, I worked in a long-term care facility, and I've experienced at least less than a dozen deaths of residents within that facility that I had to perform aftercare care for, and, you know, preparing the body, making sure before it gets to, you know, before rigor mortis sets in, just set them and position them presentable. So once the family has already been notified and they arrive, they find their loved one in a better state versus they happen to be found in the bathroom, or they were on the floor when they passed out or died, or whatever the case may be. They're in their room and it's seemingly passed away peacefully. So yes, encouraging that status or a status of being present amongst your dead loved one and normalizing that. I think that's a further point. And another point to that would be, this could be considered a more secular form of, you know, burying your loved ones. Whereas, you know, in the Christian way, or religious way, I should say, it's the traditional, you know, eulogy ceremony where they say 2 minutes about the dead person and then they say 30 minutes about coming to Jesus, which does nothing. In this sense, you could, you know, have that loved one close if it is legal within your state or country or where have you, in the backyard, or however means where it is eco-friendly and biodegradable, to keep their remains close. I think that is a added benefit to all this. Yeah.
Jack, when you were talking, it reminded me of the 2 deaths that I've experienced of close family members. And I actually saw both of their corpses immediately after. And this was during, you know, a time of trauma for myself. But if I had a time where I could have not been in that emotional state and could spend time with them to say goodbye, instead of having an urn, having the body instead of an urn, I'm trying to figure out how I would feel. It is a good question.
Yeah.
The grieving process, I think, may have been easier on me if that was the case.
Yeah, I think also part of it is kind of how we process like object permanence in general, but we have a similar concept with people around us, right? Where when someone dies and you never see them again, especially if you don't see them when they died, you never see the body, and you see a coffin, but it's not open casket even. It's much harder to process that the person has actually passed, right? It's almost like someone's missing. Instead of that they have died, and it takes much longer to fully process it. So I think in that sense, this kind of like changing of the way that we view burial and death, I think can help people process. And like you say, for a lot of people, it is traumatic when they find a body, because the only times when people get to see a body is in those scenarios, because we don't have this culture of allowing people to sit with a body when someone does die differently, right? Or it's short term when they do, if someone dies after a long illness. I think it would be better if we kind of shifted that and let people process in their own time.
Yeah, no, that's very important to say, Jack. And I think we would all benefit from just having that closure, or having that grieving process to be more comfortable for us, so that, even though it's long lasting, whatever loved one passes on, that grief still remains, but it gets easier over time. I know through my own experience with losing my father almost over a decade ago, still the grief of his loss is there, but over time it has become more or less easier. But I want to pose this kind of give you the final say on this. And it's a yes or no, Richard, since you're our special guest. And this is a very important. Do you still want to be a tree pod?
No, I think.
Good answer. At least not in reference to, this demonstration of a tree pod. But audience, what do you feel? Do you want to be a tree pod when you die? That is a brilliant question that we can propose as a discussion. So you can either answer us in the comments or answer us in the live chat. We love to hear your feedback on how you see your remains being given to Mother Gaia at the end, or whatever you want to do. But I will add this. I did some little digging just to support what is available for us here in the US, for you both in the UK, and also our friends up north in Canada. There are links and references to information as far as more green, eco-friendly burials and how you can go about doing so, and various locations of those burial grounds. So again, references in the US where it is legal, in the UK and Canada. Just follow those links in the description. We provided those references for you, so you can take a look and see what your options are if you happen to find this more of a viable option for you. But as we close, Richard, truly, truly appreciate having you. I was excited to know that you were going to be on. And I'm like, okay, I got to be there too. Because we've been like saying hi and bye in passing in Facebook. And I've always wanted to cordially meet you. And I appreciate you being here. And I hope you feel welcome to come back.
I've loved it. And I'd love to come back as well. Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. And of course, you will be a possible NP intimate like our dear friend Jack here too. So, hey, why not? But thank you, my panel of hosts. Appreciate all of the conversation. Thank you, audience, as well, our YouTube viewers and our AEN podcast, Atheist Experience Network, or Atheist. Did I say that right? Atheist Experience Network. Ooh, someone's gonna slap my hand for saying it wrong. I swear, I probably said it right. But anyway, moving on. The Atheist Community of Austin has a new YouTube channel, obviously, the AEN Atheist Experience Network, one-stop shop for all your ACA shows in podcast form. So in one channel, subscribe to there at tiny.cc/AEN podcast to listen to episodes of The Nonprofits, Secular Sexuality, The Atheist Experience, Truth Wanted, and everything else, and all of our other ACA shows on demand for you in one single location. Please, by all means, we encourage you to join our fan-supported outlets of social media. Me and Malty, of course, are predominantly there in the atheist community of Discord, which is a fan-run server inspiring the atheist community of Austin. So please join our server. Oh, of course, Jack. Duh. Jack is there too. I'm sorry. I'm skipping
Jack's
over
there
everything.
more than I am.
And more than I am, especially. Jack is definitely there more than either of us. So please find us there at tiny.cc/ACA Discord and on our Facebook page at facebook.com/group/nonprofits live. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you for sticking around and listening to our conversation. And we will see you next week.